Mojo Mustafa, and welcome to another episode of Gender Talks. Today I'm having the camera just put on me, so that way I can protect everyone's privacy, and so you feel free to talk, and your voice will be recorded a bit, but no identity, so that way your identity is completely on the QT. This talk is about the feminist paradox, dark romance, bad boys, and the science of female desire. Let me begin with a question that sounds simple, but it turns out to be anything but. Why did 150 million people, the overwhelming majority of them women, buy a novel about a billionaire who ties women up? This is not a cult readership. It's not a niche market. 150 million women bought 50 Shades of Grey. More than the combined populations of the United Kingdom and Canada. Over 80% of these buyers were women. Hold that number, not as a curiosity, but as a data point, because it sits at one of the most profound blind spots in modern American feminism. We live in an era where mainstream feminist discourse, especially in the years following Me Too, insists that sexual dynamics involving male dominance are inherently oppressive. The power imbalance it's a symbol of patriarchy and a misogynist culture whenever there's a power imbalance between men and women. But yet, women keep buying these types of books. 50 Shades was not a fluke. Dark romance is a huge category on Amazon. It's one of the fastest growing categories. It's dominated almost entirely by female buyers. It is a genre explicitly built around possessive men, male heroes, very muscular, charismatic men, moral danger, dubious consent, obsession, and psychologically risky relationships. Women make up the overwhelming majority of viewers on things like You, The Fall, Dharma, and virtually every true documentary or crime series, a lot of horror series as well, and the scary movies. Western women have the world's highest BDSM participation rates out of any women in the world, and women often choose to play the submissive. Only mostly professional sex workers engage in paid work as a dominatrix. Classic films like 9.5 Weeks and The Secretary, they remain cult favorites decades later, not among men, but among women. And they're popular because of their explicit power dynamics. At a certain point, we cannot explain 150 million copies with the phrase internalized misogyny. That's not an explanation. It's a bit like an accusation dressed up as an analysis. So what's actually going on? Like studies conducted across multiple decades consistently show that 40 to 60% of Western women report fantasies involving sexual coercion, dominance, forced seduction. These findings come from peer-reviewed journals, not tabloids, and they've been replicated. For the overwhelming majority of human history, hundreds of thousands of years, male status, physical dominance, and resource control were directly tied to survival. Women who could detect and respond to those signals were more likely to survive, reproduce, and protect those children. It's not a moral statement or a judgment, it's natural selection. Those ancient pressures didn't dissolve after 50 years of feminism and progressive ideology. They found new channels. And in the safest countries in the world, they surfaced in the female imagination. This is an important fact. The highest rates of coercive or taboo sexual fantasy among women are found in the United States, Canada, Northern Europe, and Australia. Basically, the safest, most gender egalitarian societies on the planet. The lowest rates of these types of fantasies are found in places, basically all Black and brown countries, Asia, Muslim countries, Africa, South America. Women don't tend to fantasize in those ways. Women in Jordan, rural India, they don't eroticize coercion or sexual dominance. Women do have a very difficult time talking about sexuality in those countries. And when I just came from a trip to India, when females did feel comfortable sharing and communicating with me, they themselves said they never had that type of fantasy. And then I would ask about their friends, their friendship circles, and everything like that. They too didn't have those fantasies. And these were the most westernized women because they were open enough to talk to me. The ones who were less westernized and less, I did meet one psychologist who worked in a rural area where she worked in rural development in India. And I asked her the same question. I'm like, among your clients, the poor women, the rural women who are coming in, do they have those types of fantasies? She was like, no, never. And I've asked African women, I've asked South American women, I've asked Filipino women, on that anecdotal level. Sad to say, even with AI, I couldn't find any studies that compare in a direct methodological way the difference between men and women around the world in this way. But anecdotally, it is like I've just literally never found one person.
Also, in those countries, it would be taboo to read books like that.
Yes.
What's the difference between that and reading a cheesy romance novel?
Well, the power dynamic, but even in the cheesy romance novels, yeah. Like I grew up on Milton Boon's and Harlequin romance when I first started embracing women's issues. I thought women were like Harlequin romances. So I was reading at the age of 12 many of these books, and without exception, they all had the charismatic, his thin, cruel mouth. He took her paroxysms of passion. She resisted. He then yielded and threw her arms around his neck. And there was definitely that idea of the masculine man's, like manly man, and the woman melting in her femininity. What they're finding is there's evolutionary reasons for that. There are built-in reasons, but it is interesting that it only is occurring today in the places where women feel the safest, that they can happen.
I disagree. I think it's occurring everywhere. They're just not admitting it, or they don't have access to it.
If I had one piece of data,
Some countries, it's just like,
if I found one piece of data that supported that, and believe me, I was looking, because I was really trying to find any kind of data that Black or brown dominant countries had any trace of that. Believe me, I would agree with you right away.
they also might fantasize that, like, their idea of a fantasy might not be as sexually explicit. Like in Japan, like the bad boy would be like, he's late to school because he was like helping his sister,
Right.
And like you fantasize about him like holding the umbrella over you because it's so romantic. Something like this.
Right.
This is like something you fantasize about in this culture. Like,
Oh,
like
100%.
versus like, oh, I'm gonna fantasize about having a hot makeout session. Like this is the kind of stuff that they admit to fantasizing
Right.
about. Like that's hot for them.
Right.
Versus like what I would consider like a hot fantasy.
Exactly. No, 100%. In fact, the holding the umbrella, being a gentleman, being many of those things, like a nice man. Many Indian women would say that. I just want a good man. A man who's good, who's protective and caring and loving.
So that might be there right there.
And that's a fantasy. Yeah.
Like if you're in a culture that's more sexually open, then like that that, if you might just be more inclined to fantasize about that kind of stuff.
Well, it gives that freedom of space, and that's part of the like that freedom of being able to do that, which doesn't exist in the other countries. But where it gets interesting is then you have the interplay between that freedom to do that, the fact that it happens the most in the West, it happens on a huge scale in the West, but then this forces a conclusion that contemporary feminist theory has almost been entirely unwilling to look at. The freer and safer a society becomes for women, the more transgressive their erotic imaginations tend to become. And that transgressiveness is hearkening back to that earlier DNA conditioning of women. Western feminist ideology has spent decades insisting that female sexuality must conform to values of equality, consent, and emotional safety. The result is a culture where millions of women are publicly performing one set of values while privately consuming the exact opposite at a huge scale, an industrial scale. It's not internalized misogyny. Women do deserve better, though, from a movement that claims to speak for them, because this is one blind spot that isn't addressed. The neuroscience of bad decisions. So now we need to talk about brain chemistry, because this is where the ideology meets biology, and biology has a very long memory. Here is a biological reality that rarely enters polite conversation, but it matters for understanding desire. A woman's most fertile years generally span between the ages of 18 to 30, if we're only looking at legal ages. Her peak fertility tends to be in early to mid-20s. According to the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, monthly natural conception chances are around 25% in the early to mid-20s, and then they start declining gradually after that. Neuroscience shows that the prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for impulse control, evaluating long-term consequences, and mature risk assessment, it hasn't fully developed until roughly, most scientists say, the age of 25. And this is for men and for women. We don't have a fully developed brain until we're roughly the age of 25. So what this ends up meaning is that for roughly 7 of a woman's 12 most fertile years, that happens while her brain is still maturing. And it's the prefrontal cortex part, the part about impulse, about control, long-term consequences. 7 out of the 12 most reproductive years. Now, the interesting thing is, for men, during that same pre-25 window, young men show markedly different types of behavior during that period. They have higher rates of physical risk-taking. They dominate in extreme death-defying sports, violent crime, gang involvement, sexual assault, and military enlistment. The well-documented age crime curve shows that offending men who commit crimes, especially violence and aggression, it peaks in the late teens to early 20s, and then as that prefrontal cortex is fully developed, it starts declining after that. Young women take fewer of these overt physical risks. Evidence suggests that their risk-taking during peak fertility often manifests, instead of taking risks with their physical body by doing crazy sports, where women take them risks is with men in the mating domain. Studies on the dark triad personality traits, and the dark triad personality traits are narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. They consistently show that women, particularly younger women in their fertile years, report greater short-term attraction to men displaying the dark triad traits because those signal dominance, status, unpredictability. However, those same traits correlate with poorer long-term relationship stability. So exciting guys on that short-term level, but not on the long term. Now, this is not a moral judgment of either sex. It's an observation of how evolutionary pressures, neurodevelopment, and the modern environment, how they're interacting with each other. We're not judging. All we're trying to do is acknowledge these patterns, because when we know a little bit more the connection between our biology and our evolutionary history, it allows us to make wiser choices. So for many young women, when they encounter novelty, unpredictability, status, or danger, especially around a guy, her brain releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter of anticipation, craving, and reward seeking. Also has a little bit of cortisol, stress hormone. The combination is what people describe as chemistry or a spark. The pull, that gravitational pull that makes you pull towards someone that you can't quite explain. And maybe you shouldn't pursue, but there's a chemistry there. Now, dopamine is extraordinarily good at producing short-term sexual intensity. However, it is genuinely terrible at predicting or creating long-term happiness. The same traits that maximize dopamine, dominance, emotional unpredictability, risk-taking, status aggression, are also strongly correlated with lower relationship satisfaction, higher infidelity rates, and dramatically worse parenting investment. The early stages of intense attraction display reduced activity in the brain regions associated with critical judgment. So literally, when the dopamine's kicking in, that already immature prefrontal cortex is even less. Love is blind, exactly. It just going for the feeling. And the men, of course, who most likely trigger this response in women are the dark triad men. Now, there is an alternative chemical, and that's the one we're also familiar with. It's oxytocin, the bonding hormone. Now, that is released through repeated trust, emotional safety, shared routines, affectionate contact over time. Oxytocin doesn't feel like a spark or chemistry. It feels like a home. It deepens gradually. It is the chemical architecture of lasting love. And it is the system that dating apps are most perfectly designed to suppress. Like they go right against that kick.
Yeah, because if they find their mate, then they lose a customer.
Tinder does not make money from happy couples. That's exactly it. Yes, that is exactly the basically, to go on your point, dating apps are, neurologically speaking, slot machines that occasionally send you dopamine hits of people who make you feel a little excited. Each swipe mimics a slot machine. Intermittent matches heighten craving through variable reward schedules, the same mechanism behind gambling addiction. It's documented extensively. The same, the brain just want to keep swiping. Interestingly, before Me Too, workplaces were among the most common environments where lasting couples met. Studies consistently show that marriages formed through prolonged, repeated exposure had a higher durability than those formed through dating apps or brief encounters at a bar or a nightclub or anything like that. Because over a period, that's precisely how oxytocin bonding works. It works over time, where you feel and you build that love. It requires time. It requires watching someone think, struggle, and genuinely be themselves. That creates more of the oxytocin love. Huh? The slow burn, exactly. After Me Too, the pathway of workplace romance has largely closed, especially if there was a power dynamic involved. In the not too distant past, male authority and seniority were considered quite attractive in a partner. Male managers would often marry secretaries, doctors would marry nurses, principals would marry school teachers, the list goes on. Those partnerships have largely disappeared now. One survey found, for instance, today, male managers are significantly less likely to mentor or socialize with a female colleague after Me Too, after 2017. What was framed as protection ended up producing a degree of isolation, and that is now consistently reported across Western workplaces. And it was into that social vacuum where dating apps came in. Not because they work well, but because all the other alternatives had been slowly dismantled. The bar, the workplace, the gym, the coffee shop, they're all taboo now. As a male, you're not going to be approaching women in those places, whereas in the past, that used to be the case.
Also, it's easier to do it online. You don't have to be yourself. You can be somebody else.
Yeah.
You don't have to put your current picture. You can just don't even have to put any picture.
Right.
You know, it's much safer.
Yeah. No, 100%. 100%. The problem is the result, documented by Pew Research in 2023, women on dating apps report feeling more frustrated, overwhelmed, and unsafe than men, even though they receive significantly more matches. That people lie on their profile. So not only is it a shell.
They do.
No, you're right. They lie in real life too, but eventually the lie gets caught. And then relationship, after that, trust goes. And when trust goes, a relationship is pretty much on its death spiral. So you have this very strange phenomena of dating apps almost encouraging people to lie. Because literally, if you're the truth, you won't show up on certain algorithms. Like you just won't show up. You know, I was advised, for instance, by one person to put my height as 6'9", because then I would just blow past all the things, as opposed to my real height, where I don't even show up on certain searches. If they put a certain height limit barrier.
Well, they put yours in all this picture. A picture is 20 years old.
Yeah.
You know, I even on dating app every time. But when I was on it for a short time, and I would meet some men, they're like, "You look just like your picture," and I'm like, "Yeah." You know, like, is this your real picture? They were shocked. They couldn't believe it.
I have been on some of the dating apps, and I can mirror that experience. One of the last women I met, well, we met in the coffee shop. She looked at me and she was like, "Do I look like my photo in the dating app?" Yes. You match. She's like, "Yeah, so many people lie, you know, about their thing, or they show a photo from way in the past before they gained 25 pounds."
I'm 50, 55 at the time.
Right.
And I'm looking for somebody in their 50s.
Right.
And there's a picture of you in your 20s. And I'm like, I don't know why you do that.
Why would you even do that?
Well, they just have a picture of like their dog. And I'm like, well, I don't get it because I'm not here for an animal lover.
There are actually a lot of dogs alone in a profile
That's
photo.
what I mean.
Profile photos.
Yes.
That is continuing on. Yeah, to this day. And when I speak to the guys, they, of course, when they're looking at photos of women, they want to see the sexiness. They want to see the reveal. They want to see as much
They
skin
want
as
to see the
possible.
waist down is what they want to see.
Basically, yeah.
You look great from the waist up.
Right.
Waist up looks great. You need her in person. From here down, she's like this.
Pear-shaped. Yeah. That is very, very true. But then guys in their brain many times think, oh, I want to see a lot of skin, so therefore she must want to see a lot of skin. And so they take off their shirt, and then you're looking at it and going, what the hell?
Automatic skip up for me on that one.
Precisely. And that
Even
is
if they see, even if like they seem cool, it's like
correct.
show this picture and I don't know why. It's just like
Because then they'll send you a dick pic right away.
yeah.
Well, I was going to bring up that. Thank you for bringing up that.
You just show this to everybody and make me feel like not special.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Like,
Yeah.
I never have a picture of me in a bikini. Okay. Like, okay. You want to see that? Take me to the beach if you want to see that.
That's right.
You know.
That's actually really good boundary control, because many women actually will put pictures of themselves in a bikini, and they will put their profile pics really enhancing certain attributes, but then like, you're objectifying me. You're and I'm like, but hold on, your profile picture is all you objectifying yourself. As you both pointed out, and my experience as well, with the dating apps, it's left both sexes miserable. For different reasons, neither is served by the current dating app ecosystem. It's basically the default right now. Most people have to use it because all the other avenues are gone, but it is not a very satisfactory medium. As documented by the Journal of Research, sexual selection by female choice can magnify both extremes of genius and folly. Women are the gatekeepers of sex to a great degree. Unless there's a situation like assault, women decide who goes in or out. And therefore, they choose the type of men who are going to be breeding into the next generation, that those genetic traits that are going to come in to the next generation. What is really interesting is that because many times women choose bad boys, dark triad types, very masculine, charismatic, good-looking, tall guys, in a very literal evolutionary sense, they're creating some of the monsters for tomorrow. Because many of the bad boy traits also is where the criminal harms happen to women. In many African American cultures where there's single motherhood, the woman would love to be able to control her son and make him behave well and not be like the bad boy dad. But they're growing up in a poor neighborhood. He's seeking male role models. What does he do? He joins a gang. He gets involved in criminality. He gets hyper masculinized. Like she's not able to keep him under control. Now, in white culture, I've noticed some other different patterns playing out, but the aggression, I've seen it in a number of cultures where you're speaking to the mom and she's like, I can't control my son. I just can't control him. He's 6'3" now. I'm still 5'4". I try to tell him off. He just looks at me and walks out. I can't control him. And so there was one woman, I remember meeting her in Hawaii. She came from a religious background. She picked a bad boy. He was very abusive to her. She had a child as a result of rape because she didn't believe in abortion. So she actually brought the baby to term. And she's looking at me and we're talking and she's like, every day I look at my son, who I love. Every day he looks more and more like his father. Every day he takes on certain attributes of his father, and I'm trying, but I see it. And so we're in the bank office. She was a bank manager. And as we're chatting, the door opens and her kids come in, and there's the son. I'm looking at him, and we're silently just like, and I'm watching like his bit of aggressive behavior and all that. And then he leaves, and she's like, you see, I love him. He's my child. But I brought continuing this on. And so what ends up happening is that many times women choose these charismatic men, become a mother often. The guy, dark triad traits, he's not sticking around. He's not going to be a father. He's off basically creating more babies or having more fun. So she ends up being a single mom. So now she wants to have a dad. She wants to have a father. And that's when the nice guys come in. That's where the nice guys, the ones who didn't get to make babies, the ones who were overlooked, the ones who were friend zoned, the ones who were pushed away, suddenly it's like, I need someone to look after my kid. And suddenly, and I've seen it happen to friends of mine, you know, the nice guy, the dorky guy, suddenly now he's in play. And
Also, her brain is not developed.
now it's more developed, right? She's looking more for the oxytocin rather than dopamine. And that is exactly what happens when they're young. Western women will often choose a dark triad man as a short-term sexual partner. And then once the baby happens and they're now a single mom, they choose the nice, reliable, nice guy to marry and help raise the child that the bad boy left behind.
A couple of really good friends were like, well, I have to have a kid right now. And it's like, well, you're 20.
Mhm.
And one of our friends was like, well, this is our culture. So,
Mhm.
and but other people are like, well, I just, or another friend, he's like, this is my culture. I should be a dad by now easily,
Mhm.
or want to be a bad dad in 2 years. And they're all really young, so it's like, what about this, hangover, like you said, the biology never forgets. I think that's a lot of it too, is that they're in certain cultures, they're expected to have children still really young.
Right. If feminism had looked at biology as part of its program, so when I did women's studies at university, one of the things I noticed even then, and I've researched it along the years since then, is modern feminism. It looks at the male-female relation from an ideological perspective. Biology is completely put to the side, except to say one thing. Such and such was a biologist who was a man who was a patriarch, and he put forth this theory. So they analyze anything to do with evolutionary psychology, evolutionary biology, or biology from it's a patriarchal construct. It was created by men. This is an ideology that serves men. In fact, evolutionary psychology and biology, the war that they have with modern feminists, because they hate that part of looking at biology. So to answer your question and looking at it from a Taoist yin yang perspective, if we're looking at it realistically, is that, okay, you have these 12 very fertile years, and then afterwards it declines. If we're looking at it realistically, feminism would have been really fighting strong for daycare and universities. Much better support for employment while being a young mom. Many companies right now will fire a woman if she gets pregnant, or it's still in many countries, like of course in Scandinavia, not, but there's many other countries, and even Germany for the longest time, German women were literally sometimes told by their employers to have an abortion. It's like, you want to stay working at this company. So there's been a very strong anti-baby push for, in the workplace, because they felt it undercut women's productivity. But in actual fact, some of the leading leaders, some amazing leaders that I've seen in womanhood were moms when they were young. They still kept up with their education. They still found ways to keep up with their work. They developed, the kids grew up, and now they're in that post-kid phase, and many of them became leaders. And there's actually a certain really good power in that. The wisdom that comes from actually having lived life, grown up children, dealt with the world. The feminist movement has pushed the idea of the girl boss, you're bad, you don't need no man, children, maybe it'll happen in your 30s, but if you don't have any at all, that's also great, and very much pushed a not pro-child narrative. In fact, a lot of the relation, and this is from someone who runs an abortion rights website, much of the relation with modern feminism and babies is abortion. Not the celebration of motherhood, but actually No, focus on your career. So yeah, it's again, I'm not judging, but what I'm saying is the feminist movement could have looked at biology and evolutionary psychology and integrated that into some of the practical processes. So that if a woman chose to just be a career mom and a boss babe and no child, great, go for it. But if she also chose to be a mom, to get an education and go through a path that the feminist movement would have supported her with laws and regulations and policies so that she can also choose that path as well. And so that's the part where it really left, because you see so many women now in their 40s and 50s today who chose the career path and now they don't have children, or they started to try to have children in their late 30s or 40s and they found it almost impossible. And now they're having this massive regret. Like Germany, I met so many German women who like, I wanted to have a child. And that window skipped me. I focused on the career, focused on making my life, paying the rent, being in my own boss. And now I'm just feeling really hollow.
Yeah, I don't know very well. All my women friends who are around my age who decided not to have kids,
They feel good about it.
like,
Yeah.
it's not for me.
Right. Yeah, I know. And I've definitely met those as well. Like the lovely thing about looking at things from a Taoist perspective is as soon as I say something, there's automatically a contradiction within it. In the Tao, there's always the paradox right within every sentence, every statement. So another aspect of how female behavior changes and how it sends different signals is fertility, fashion, and mixed signals. So during peak fertility years, many young women, before their full prefrontal maturity, they tend to dress more provocatively, more sexy, more sex positive. Research on ovulatory cycle effects show that when women are near ovulation, they tend to choose more revealing clothing, form-fitting outfits, and attention-drawing colors such as red or pink when going out. So there is a subconscious element to the way women are dressing, but there's also this aspect of a lot of that sexy dressing is happening at a time when their prefrontal is not fully developed. They're not even aware of the insane effect that they are having on men around them. They're just like, oh my God, this yoga pants look really nice. And my cleavage outfit, I'm just walking around, I'm 21, and it's like, no idea how much of an effect that's happening on all these hugely testosterone guys riding or walking down the street and then just like, mama. At Montreal on a summer's day is I have never seen in my life any city as radically sexy with the Gen Z cohort as Montreal. Yeah, I think there's 3 bras in the city in summer, I'm riding it. I've nearly crashed my bicycle a couple. And again, I'm trying to be a good guy. It's not look.
Shopping here is a nightmare also, like, we had to go back to the US to get
Are
more.
you serious?
So I'm talking to a really good friend of
It's like
mine.
guaranteed to have a sports bra, it's just like a cloth, I'm like, this is so.
Talking to a really good friend. He said something like, I know you're not from here because both of you are wearing a bra. We're like,
It's not even just plunging necklines. Like here is all side boobs and like it's just like. So studies have shown, have confirmed this pattern. The women do in that age tend to dress in very provocative manners. One of the weird things about that is it sends mixed signals. It sends strong mixed visual signals to men. In the post-Me Too environment, it creates genuine tension. Now, of course, this is in no way, shape, or form trying to denigrate a woman's right to dress how she wants. The slut walks, which started interestingly in Canada and then spread around the world, they did make an important point. Women should be able to dress as they please without harassment or assault. The principle of bodily autonomy and safety is valid and necessary. But real-world consequences do appear in studies and anecdotes. Provocative dress during high fertility periods can increase unwanted attention, misread signals, interpersonal conflict, especially when paired with incomplete impulse control. An interesting twist on this, because in conversations with many women, they will say, well, it's you men who want us to dress like that. You're objectifying us and you're doing this to us. But many times, while men will appreciate a beautiful outfit, very few are telling women to dress that way. On an anecdotal level, I have noticed when the comments do happen, it's intra-female. So one woman dresses very sexy and her girlfriends are like, girl, you look great. Look at the way your boobs go. Oh my God, that yoga pants is fantastic on you. Your butt looks fantastic. In the olden days, like back in the 19th century, when women would wear the outfits with décolletage and just much more revealing outfits in those times earlier, it was for the spring ball or the summer fair. It was for these special events, which were literally mating events. The family goes, the girls are dressed up in their finest, the boys are looking. If they like a girl, they flirt, and there's something mutual. Then he goes to the father and says, is it okay if I have a chaperone date with your daughter? And there was these cultural protocols. So sensual dress was a signal of fertility, just like a peacock's feathers is a signal like, yes, here I am, I'm ready to mate, and that was the signal in the past. And prior to Me Too, to a degree, there was still an element of that feeling like a signal when a female dressed sexily. There was part of she wanted to be appreciated or admired or possibly approached. That is all gone now, but the sexual attire is still there. Actually, a great video in New York of a woman walking down the street and guys whistling and hollering at her. It's only a few years ago she made it. What was fascinating about that video is it was the vast majority. In fact, there was almost not one. They were all black and brown guys, not white guys. White guys don't do that shit at all anymore. And I speak to white guy after white guy after white guy. 3-4 generations of feminism has expunged that. Before, I still remember when I was a kid walking in construction sites in England, the British workers, like white workers, they see a cute girl walking by, they do the whistle, and there was that little bit of a dance that would happen, and the girl would continue walking.
Why am I dressed up if you're not going to whistle at me?
Simply. And many women kind of liked it. And I would speak to women, like, yeah, give me a little extra bounce in my step. Men are appreciating me. And there was that little dance. Of course, a guy wasn't going to be a dick and like get out of his construction crew and run after her or anything. It was just this little dance that happened. Appreciation on both sides, and that was nice. But now that's dangerous. So you're right that there are black and brown men who do it. But as we're finding in many Western countries, black and brown men often come, especially if they're recent immigrants, from cultures where there are not those constraints, where men can be very, very forward. In India, the word they call it is eve teasing, where if a girl is dressed up, or not even dressed up, just a female, guys will sexually harass her in public on a level that is we can't even think of here. Many of those countries, oh my God, it is just, they take it to such a level. And in India, like, it has gotten better. Like when I was in India long ago, no woman would dress revealingly at all. No Indian woman. Now, Oh my God. I was almost in the big city, not Montreal level, but definitely um, where I'm like, whoa, that's a mini skirt. Oh my God, that's cleavage outfit. Like very, very different from the 90s. It was like, so there is, but then you have the same tension happening because I speak to the guys and they're all frustrated. They're like, oh yes, if you even look at a woman now, you'll get to lose your job and da 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 da. And they're very, very on the male end, they're very unhappy with the whole dynamic because they don't know. On one hand, it's the same thing, mixed signals. She's looking attractive, she's looking in this presenting way, but if you approach, are women dressing for the attention of men, or are they dressing for
themselves.
the validation of women?
Well, and and I see there's so many beautiful women and outfits in Montreal. It's sure you're skanky, slutty stuff, but whenever I see some gorgeous outfit, I always say, "Oh, this is fantastic." Just walking down the street, I'm like, "Love your dress. Oh my God, you look
Perfect.
gorgeous." Because
Perfect.
I'm just like, "Wow!" Like somebody, he's gorgeous with this gorgeous, expensive outfit, and she's put together, and I'm like, "Wow, you look amazing." And they're always like, "Thank you so much." You can't open the door for them. You can't whatever. They're behind.
You dress however you want, really get mad if somebody tries to ask for a number.
That's the paradox. That is the paradox. Is that you're seeing, but then you cannot even look. Like maybe it's the tiniest glance, but that's it. Like just keep your eyes down. So the United States leads the developed world in children raised without fathers. Canada has also got one of the highest rates of single mothers in the world. And part of this is to understand how this happened, you have to follow the legal history. And it comes directly from the feminist movement in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Many of the things that happen in the feminist movement, just like Me Too, always happen for an original, valid, solid reason. Me Too happened, Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, what's his name, the rapper, like R. Kelly, bad men, very, very bad men, deserve to be punished. Men were all on board with that as well. But then you have that thing of mission creep, where what was a crime is here, the Harvey Weinstein, the Bill Cosby, but then it becomes, oh, he's looking at me. That's a mini rape. Oh, he's doing this. He gave me a compliment. That's a massive transgression. And that mission creep is where we have where a lot of the division is happening between the genders, because men don't know what these signals mean anymore. And if they do make any move, they can literally have their lives
Slap your ass with it.
back in the old days. Yeah.
80s,
Yeah.
70s,
Or 70s.
Yeah.
I grew up on a movies in England. They call them the carry-on movies. And they were these British comedies. And it was all saucy and, oh, ever so lovely. And pinch the bottom. And everyone was pinching everyone's bottom in those days. And the girls would be like, oh, Mr. Cyril, you shouldn't be doing that. And he's like, oh, come on, Gladys, give us a bit. That's actually one of the things I read about Ladies First, as in because men are so confused right now that we almost can't make a move anymore. But when women are proactive, they're choosing who they want. So I call it the Ladies First policy, that women now, we're living in the post-Me Too era. Guys are terrified. Women have to kind of make the move now, because then they're choosing who they want, number one. And that automatically means they're choosing who they don't want. So it's in a sense, it's actually pure feminism. It's an empowered choice, choosing who you want. With the vast majority of households being led by single moms, it led to a lot of repercussions down the line for both men and for women. Second wave feminism, and second wave feminism is the feminism that had the sexual revolution in it and equality under the law. So that was the second wave. And they argued, second wave feminists, with genuine historical justification, that divorce courts were patriarchal institutions that favored men who made money, breadwinning fathers. By the late 70s, organizations, including the National Organization of Women, feminist legal clinics, women's attorneys, they began pushing for reforms that reframe mothers as the primary psychological parent. And there were books like Beyond the Best Interests of a Child. These books created a dramatic shift in how parenting happened. Courts began awarding custody to mothers in the vast majority of divorces, especially in the Anglo-American world. And what they found, one weird result, was that when there was this automatic giving of custody to women, it actually created a perverse incentive for women to actually initiate divorce. So they found that women began initiating divorce much more.
Because they knew they were going to win.
They knew they were going to win, and they knew they were going to get custody, child support, alimony, and which created a lot of bitterness in men. They felt very unfairly treated.
Sure. Witness to that myself.
Right. And it's a tension that to this day has not been diminished. Just one quick aside, when I lived in Denmark, that was an amazing form of feminism where women they fought for the rights of men to get co-parenting and divorce. There was no blame, but the default was that both parents had to locate themselves close to the school, and the kid would spend part-time with mom, part-time with dad. And the way that affected society there was mind-blowing. Because
what if it's like one of the parents is crazy? Or
that was the one exception in the law. Any abuse, then the non-abusive. In Denmark, the model was very different because rather than having a default position, which, as you guys know from my earlier presentations, from the beginning of American feminism in 1848, it took a confrontational angle against men. The men were a problem, again and again and again, a problem. And it's true, there are problematic men, of course. But with those blanket judgments and that confrontational style, you now have the men's rights movements, MGTOW, all these men's things in America, especially, and Anglo countries that are now in this war. You go to Denmark, you're in a park on a Tuesday afternoon when it should just be women with babies. All you're seeing is men with babies and toddlers and pushing strollers. And like, I'll never forget one time, it was 2010, I saw two, Sven and Jan, like two blonde, young dads with their baby strollers, and they're both pushing and they're talking to each other. And I just flagged them and I'm like, hi, can I chat with you for a second? Like, I'm a stupid American. I don't know what's going on. Where are the women in the park? Why aren't you? And they're like, oh, paid paternity leave and paid maternity leave. But the guys, there were certain incentives in the system that the guys should take it. And so many men were quite happy to take the paid paternity leave and become dads. And what ended up happening, same thing in divorce, without that confrontational approach. And the funny thing is, it was Danish feminists who pushed hard for these programs, not men. Men got the benefit. And then they realized, oh my God, I like this. I like being a dad. In fact, and I will never forget it, during 2010, I did this tantric workshop in Copenhagen. And there were different people standing up in the class, and everyone was Danish. There was only a few foreigners. And I'll never forget this one woman. She's, a blonde Danish woman. And she's like, yes, my husband, he just spends time with the children. He doesn't have any time for me. I come home, I go to work, I come home, I have needs. I'm a woman.
this is what the men would say.
Complete opposite land. And then the husband stands up and he's like, I love my children. I just need to spend time with them. And sometimes I'm too tired to walk away. And I was just like, oh my God. It was total opposite land. But you don't have. And so one of the other biggest things with divorce, because that's where I went on the side trip, was divorce. You had guys who enjoyed being a father, not having any bitterness. And because they're a father part-time, that actually looks very attractive to other women. Because instead of being a bitter American dad who's paying child support, paying alimony, really feels miserable, gets to see his kid maybe on a Sunday, or maybe because of the accusations, as you were saying, many women will make accusations. She gets to leave the state. So many guys would talk to me and be like, I haven't seen my kid in 6 years, supervised visits and everything like that. So there's that element of bitterness, which new women don't want to date a guy who's really, really bitter about his ex. It just does not make a guy seem attractive. Denmark, you don't see that. What you see is the guys of single dads, kids part-time with them, new woman gets to see, and often it's a single mom, because people are just interrelating. So then they start relating easy. They merge their families, blended families, maybe have another kid or whatever. But there's so much more harmony. And the kids grow up. They did studies on the kids compared to kids of single moms. And they found the kids are like, there's no problem with their development, because they know, oh, when I go to mom's house, there's mom's rules. When I go to dad's house, there's dad's rules. And, life goes on. And there's not that element of bitterness. Moms and dads spending thousands and thousands in divorce courts over custody battles, tearing the kids apart, having parents tell the kid, don't watch what your father's doing, report back to me. I've heard that so many times, where the kid ends up becoming a spy for the parents, and then that being used in court and things like that. Just such that confrontational model that the Anglo-American, and this is not just America, Australia. When I say Anglo-American, Australia, English Canada, America, New Zealand, and England, like the Anglosphere countries, all have the same situation. And you have men's rights movement and this bitterness that's happening in all these countries. And what's weird is the feminist movement fought for women to get the right to have custody, but that has not helped women, because now they're a full-time mom. It's hard for them to get a relationship, a new partner, a new love. Like one lady told me in Hawaii, she was like one of our guests in the pre-volcano community. She had 2 kids and she was a single mom. She's like, Mojo, every time I go on a date, it cost me $60 in babysitting. And so I want to introduce the guy to my kids as soon as possible. But then that puts a pressure on him, because it's like, well, I don't want to be a dad right away. And so it ends up pushing them away. And she was like, I'm really struggling with this. And I've spoken to so many single moms in the Western countries where they have that same struggle. They literally don't get a love life. And they found, like, for instance, children of single moms face higher rates of school failure, behavioral problems, mental health difficulties, especially boys raised without the yang energy of a male role model in the home. They have some of the worst outcomes. There is even a lot of, they haven't done a formal study, and partly because of the way our society is right now. But in certain Western groups, many boys of single moms will become trans, because they've had a mom who's been telling him for so many years how bad his dad was, that he internalizes that guilt, feels terrible about it, and either becomes a trans, like doesn't want to even be a man and do that. And I literally, and I spoke to one trans woman, man to woman, who said exactly like that. Like, my penis is a weapon. I don't want it. I want it gone. Yeah, just he totally had been
Toxic.
very much so. He literally did not like. He's like this thing hanging between my legs, like it's a weapon. It's pure. It just gives pain. Yeah, it gives pain and evil, and it feels really bad. So there's trans, there's gay, in African American, you got gang violence. So there's these weird offshoots that happen as a result of growing up with just single mom. And again, there's massive exceptions to that. Barack Hussein Obama, grown up by a single mom, Kansas mom, he became president of the United States, didn't do too badly. Trevor Noah, comedian, South African comedian who did The Daily Show, same thing, single mom, ended up becoming successful. So this is not a blanket judgment against single moms. But there is a statistical analysis that could be done that the odds that your kid is going to have some issues, same thing with young daughters in that phase of fertility, where 7 of the 12 years are not fully brain developed. Before, the father was the filter. He would use his brains and look at the guy and say, yeah, I know you're infatuated with him, but he doesn't have a job. He doesn't have this. He doesn't have this. He doesn't have this. Get another one. And so there was an element that the guy would filter for the female because his feelings weren't involved. He wasn't emotionally like, oh my God, he makes me feel. He's just looking at him on a practical, logical level. Is this guy good for my daughter? And many times he would give the verdict, and that was resented a lot by women, naturally, of course. But many women also appreciated it because they would bring guys home or the guy would present himself and there would be that other analysis. And even me, when I was growing up in Canada, I saw it in Canada and I saw it in a Swedish couple and a Danish couple where the fathers said, if my daughter's going to date a guy, I would rather her bring him home and sleep with him in her bed. And that one element of giving her her own autonomy, responsibility, and freedom and making her choice, but the family gets the judge. They see him and the guy in the morning. In all 3 cases, the women made much more responsible choices. They knew they had the freedom to bring a guy home and sleep with him in their bed. Right. They're not being rebellious, and they would actually choose better guys because they knew that guy would be at breakfast in the morning and they didn't want their family teasing the hell out of her. Like, you brought in whatever it was. So they would pick better, and I was lucky to have dated 2 of those women. And it was really interesting to get up in the morning and meet the family and okay, and then realize, oh my God, I got to be on my best behavior here. And, I got to step up my game and make sure I present well because this is not infatuation. This is dad looking at me.
It's a German thing too. It's normal for teenagers to just bring a guy home and then the parents are like, oh, hey, what's up?
Yes, 100%.
They know that, they know that they're using protection because they could hear everything basically.
Right.
And then there's less judging about it.
Yes. In fact, yeah, 2 of the women were, one was Danish, one was Swedish, but it's that Germanic culture.
Yeah.
It's all the same. The Northwestern Europe had a style of feminism, which to this day, there's many elements of it like that, which I admire amazingly, and same thing with the custody and all of that stuff. One of the aspects, and this is the part with liberal feminism, is I touched on it already, but the anti-child phenomena of liberal feminism. Conservative women in America, I believe they have twice as many children as liberal women. They tend to have them more in the context of marriage. So there's a 2-parent family, and the women often report more happiness. So with liberal women, part of that has been the ideology. And so, for instance, one of the famous feminists from the 70s, Shulamith Firestone, she said, as she wrote in 1970, The heart of a woman's oppression is her childbearing and child rearing roles. While it is true that the having babies and rearing them does limit and have effects for sure on a woman's entire life, for many women, they report that also as one of the most satisfying things of being a woman.
Well, you're always going to care about your kid, and that's saying you're only as happy as your unhappiest child, or your mother who never stopped worrying. So, but I don't think that it's controlling or limiting. And people, my girlfriends who never had kids, but this is when I had my daughter, and I'm just like, it's the whole reason for being, if you ask me.
Right.
It's the only reason for living, if you ask me.
Right.
And they're like, I don't want nothing to do with that. So it's like, that's like the toughest job you'll ever love,
Right. Right. And that is exactly it, is that many women report, like what you say, it is a very fulfilling part of their life.
Yeah, for sure.
And when you had feminists saying, actually, no, that is not really, like, it's, as she said, the heart of a woman's oppression.
Also, like, but I have a great kid. I have the greatest kid. I don't like kids. I love my kid. I don't like kids at all. I love my kid.
That is actually a good point.
You can have a bad kid.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Yes.
like my nephew, he's a drug addict. He's a nightmare. And the oldest daughter, she's perfect. Blame it on the parents, but it's like, how can it's destroying their whole family, their marriage, and everything. So it can be the greatest thing for sure when you have a great kid.
Right.
But you can also get it done.
Actually, yeah, that is a very, very good point.
Like my nephew, who's the drug addict, this has been unwitting help for our family, for them, and whatever. It's like, but if you have a great kid, that's great.
Yeah.
But a lot of kids and parents, most of the time, they don't get along like we do.
Right. No, I mean, your identities are not known, so I can just say it in general. You are one of the best mom and daughter teams that I've seen.
One of the best.
Ever. I've seen a couple of good teams. I'm not going to give you first prize, but you're definitely up there. There's an elite level of mom and daughter, because often one of the most primeval battles is between a mom and her daughter. I've seen some wars between mom and daughter. My mom only forgave me 6 months before she died. Yeah. I had a long period of estrangement with her as well, where it was... I had two very faulty parents as well, but both of them I still love because I can see how elements of my character were shaped by both of them. My dad was completely on the hedonistic side, pleasure, fun, drank with the Beatles, drank with the Bee Gees. He was the Rolling Stone, like very much in that mode, but loved me, supported me, and in all my travels in this planet, whenever I was in trouble, I could just call him for anywhere in the world and be like, Dad, I'm in trouble. Okay, son. And he'd throw money on my dad would bail me out of trouble all the time. Like it was really, and would never with a speech, never with a lecture, never like, well, you got to be more responsible in Japan, or da 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 da. You need to do this. Never. Unquestioningly, I was very, very. My mother would do it. She would help a little bit when I was much younger, but always with the most vicious attacks on my character, personality, and being. Yeah, so it was. I definitely got the mixed bag. It does. What was it? 75% of women who identify as liberal are childless, compared with only 40% of conservative women at the same age, and it's actually widened even more with today's generation. Dopamine thrills fade, oxytocin endures. So the conversation between men and women, the one happening in bedrooms and courtrooms, in custody battles and dating apps, in erotic fantasies and legal briefs, it's not a conversation about who is right. It is a conversation about what we need from each other in order to build lives worth living. Modern dating culture is hyper yang focused. It's fast, it's transactional, it's competitive, and it's optimized for stimulation. What has been drained out of it is the yin, the patience, the receptivity, the emotional attunement, the willingness to be present with another person across time, the way we used to do it in the workplace back in the old days. The missing ingredient in modern relationships, it's not a better algorithm for dating apps. It is balance and the courage to pursue something slower and deeper than the dopamine hit of excitement. A yin-yang approach, a Taoist approach, it doesn't deny biology. It doesn't romanticize domination. It acknowledges desire. Arousal can open the door, but oxytocin attachment is what builds the home. The path forward is not more apps, more rules, more surveillance of human impulse. It is more trust, more mixed gender spaces, and more room for the complicated, imperfect reality of what human beings really are. Updated workplace policies that would allow dating, but centered around consent culture, respecting boundaries, and maintaining a professional workplace, would go a long way towards creating a more harmonious work-life balance. Because in the end, dopamine thrills fade. Oxytocin is what endures for life. A culture that optimizes only for excitement will burn itself out. A culture that learns to balance desire with devotion, chemistry with character, can help to heal the gender division plaguing society today. This is not a rejection of pleasure. It's an invitation to something deeper. Thank you. Thank you. Final questions, or are we all good? Well, what I'm trying to do with all of these events is to bring it with the yin-yang close. And what I'm noticing more and more and more as I look on every single issue that is affecting even the whole planet, there is this yin-yang formula that applies. You know, even our thing with capitalism and communism, capitalism, very yang, very hierarchy. You gotta make money, you gotta get on top. Communism, oh, we're socialist, we're egalitarian, there's no hierarchy, very yin. What ends up? Extreme capitalism, extreme communism end up meeting. A lot of people die, and a lot of crossover ends up happening. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate that.